Hey everyone, today I want to introduce Vinod Parmeshwar of the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. Vinod is both the CFO and the CHRO of a company and has gone through talent acquisition, HRIS, systems integrations from both the finance side and the HR side. So he's got some great tips on how to build a strategic hiring plan that aligns with the company's business priorities, as well as ideas on how to engage your team and build a hiring plan that will grow with you. So let's get started. Hey, everyone. We have a fantastic guest, Vinod. Why don't you go ahead and give us a little intro about yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Vinod Parmeshwar. I'm the CFO and HRO at the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy based out of Cambridge, Massachusetts.
All right. And I think what's the greatest thing about this is so many people in HR and TA have questions about, okay, how do we create like even our business goals and match our talent acquisition goals to business goals? For listeners, you've got someone on the line here who's handled both sides of the finance. I would gather that most people haven't talked to a CFO who also runs HR. This is the time, hopefully, we'll get some good insights from Vinod on these topics. So, Vinod, tell me a little bit, when we were talking about the transition of your recent HRIS, you had 6 solutions before you transitioned to one.
Yeah. So, part of the thing is, and this is also a good way to approach whenever we are trying to add value as a CHRO or even as a CFO to any business, is to look at current source of inefficiencies and what I would call drag that is preventing us from achieving liftoff for the business. When I did the analysis, when I came into Lincoln, I saw that we had a number of disparate systems that had been put in place for managing different benefits and different situations. So, for example, we had one for vision, we had one for managing Cobra, we had one for managing our healthcare, all of which didn't speak to each other, which meant that a lot of human hours was being wasted both on the employee side and on my team, which was non existent at that time because it was just me. So, if I had to build something, I had to create something that was more efficient. And so
Yeah.
that is what, like the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. We did a request for proposals, bought the most tech enabled system, and created APIs, which are basically tech speak for systems to systems integration so that the systems talk to each other, reducing the chance for human error and thereby freeing up the team's time to focus on more value added activities so that we could better service our internal clients.
Awesome. There you go. So those were all HR platforms. I know the company was much smaller back then. Did you guys have an applicant tracking system when you came
So,
on?
no, we didn't. We actually had an email inbox where it would come in. Part of the problem for me, because I'm very data driven, was the lack of data. I couldn't build a talent pipeline. I didn't know how many applicants, how many days it was taking me basic data to a higher. How, how, so for me, the first step in that is getting to an HRIS. But the opportunity, like they say, is like never waste a good crisis. If you are in a system at a basic stage, you have the ability to leapfrog generations. Instead of
Yeah.
just moving to the next step above, you have the ability to do a seismic shift upwards
Yep.
in efficiency and effectiveness. That is what I was able to do because it would save us a lot of time, effort, and money, particularly with nonprofits, because we are completely dependent on people. Saving people's time is the biggest cost saving we can do. For most businesses, that also tends to be true. I have a simple philosophy: anything that can be done in 3 seconds should not take 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's great. I have a way of product managing all the stuff I've done. And it only came to this realization maybe like 4 years ago when we were doing some big launches. And I termed it what will break first. So when you're gonna scale up things, and I think that's that risk aversion level, like, and same thing is like, I can't get out of email. If I'm gonna hire 3 people, email is just gonna be a nightmare. If I have to hire 10, it's absolutely never gonna work. You
Yeah.
gotta think like a product when you're trying to get your first thing done. Yeah, you can hire one person
Yeah.
for email, but you can't hire 3 and manage at the same time. That's not gonna work in email, and you're better off putting the time even to get a lower cost ATS, spend the time to learn it, because if you're hiring 3, you're probably gonna be hiring 3 to 5 again, so you're just beating your head against the wall by running the same routine. I'm glad you bring up automation because that's where my brain goes all the time. What would break first to me was if we're building like a sales funnel or a marketing funnel,
Yeah.
I can bring one person through and just look at every single step or every call or every note or any conversation between our team. What happened to get that person through? And even if it's manually retyping stuff that got broken, I don't really care. Document it and then see if you can get 2 people through faster, and then 5, and then can you get 100, or what's gonna break at that next point. In our Jira, at last system, we'd have something that just said, the tagline is, "What will break first?" If it's urgent, that's what gets solved. In the next meeting, we're tackling the urgent, what will break first, so we can't scale. And that, I think, another way of looking at that risk side of, do we implement or not implement something, to solve those kind of problems?
So, Jonathan, going back to your earlier question about adding value, to be effective in a CHRO role, you have to be able to do the dance. As a successful CHRO, you need to visualize what skills and positions you need in the institutions and bring them into the organization where that position itself never existed in the past.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
actually allows you to grow, again, leapfrog generations of improvement. So that is something where you need to zoom out and zoom in. The hiring process is more zooming in and trying to find pain points and fixing them, visualizing what skills and talents you need, which do not exist in the structure, requires zooming out, taking the longer view, and it becomes a dance between the two, which has got implications, again, to your question on what is our financial ability to absorb. Which talent do we need? So you have to work with your leadership team to prioritize. So we are building that capacity. Next year, we are going to build the other person's team. So people have to wait as we build so that over a period of time, let's say between 2 to 3 years or 5, you have built out the entire institutional capacity on every front.
Because in startup world where I have been, at managing building stuff, we have the same way. If you're gonna raise money, you have to have a business plan, not like here's their financial model and your go-to-market, those part, but your staffing side too. In a startup, because it's so risky, you're not hiring for 2 years from now. You're hiring for today and the next 18 months at max,
Yeah,
because it's just way too risky. You can't hire a VP of sales who's done $50 million. You need someone who can roll up their sleeves and get you to 5 million.
absolutely.
That's interesting because that leads me to another point. Most recruiters I talk to feel that they and their teams are recruiting on their heels. Like they're not being strategic. They're order takers
Mhm.
rather than being strategic. So in your experience from your HR and TA and finance side, what are some of the ways you've seen TA and HR teams become strategic and get that seat at the table? How do they bridge recruiting KPIs like cost per hire and time to fill to business outcomes?
Sure. So, one of the things that we have been doing, and this is again something that will have to happen in collaboration with the business side of your institution. For example, something that I'm doing right now is creating a more structured planning mechanism using my finance hat so that I can get into a basic version of workforce planning, which we have never engaged in. It is coming up with a template on the HR side so that people can engage more positively in quarter wise planning. Who are you planning to hire over the next year? What quarter are you planning? That gives my in house recruiter the opportunity to engage in recruitment at a more strategic level instead of trying to figure it out at the last minute, or in which case they are not able to put their best foot forward in terms of adding value. The other way we have managed to do it is to provide more structure and transparency around the process. We have created structures where none existed, salary grades, and made all of that transparent to all the managers so that anybody coming into the institution now has a very clear idea This is the programmatic pathway to growth. This is the administrative pathway to growth. Assistant, associate, manager, associate director, director, and then you can go further up, executive director, C-suite. Part of it is creating the levels and making both the process and the policy transparent so there is less ambiguity. That decreases tension, and you have to iterate towards a better process. So for example, historically, we had one window for promotions. We got feedback that was not sufficient. We increased it to 2. We heard that was not sufficient. Now we have increased it to 3. Part of it is having that kind of agility to respond to business needs and demonstrating to people that you are able to translate that feedback, actual changes in processes that impact them. One should never ask for feedback if one is not willing to implement the outcomes and be transparent with what happened as a result of the survey.
Yeah, that's great. I think you mentioned before you were employee 40 or so at Lincoln?
42nd, 43rd.
And how many employees do you have now?
So within a sister institution, we are around 173.
Wow. All right. And that was over what, 5 years?
7.
7 years. Okay.
Almost.
Yep. So you doubled in 4 years or 7 years. And then I think our guests should know that Vinod is an entrepreneur and a business coach, which is definitely different than most of your CFOs, definitely different than most of your HR leadership, because it comes in with a different view, which is why I think it's just a phenomenal conversation of understanding the business side, because I go back to this all the time. You can't automate something that you can't define. So people say, yes, we're going to put in this ATS. Well, why? What was the problem first? And people come to me all the time. Hey, I need an ATS. What's the best one? I'm like, okay, well, let me help you define the question first, which is, what's the process that you don't think the ATS is working for? Or do you have something happening in the business that your system can't work or you don't know yet? If you just start with asking the right question, you can get to the next step.
I can illustrate that with an example of how I've done it. We had a situation where we are in the business of putting out intellectual products, and we have put out books. We have papers that are widely read by a lot of people who are working on different issues. It could be affordable housing, land conservation, water, etc. My idea in my head was like all of those were paper-based stuff, and some portions were on the web. So if I wanted the institution to reach out to newer audiences, I need for us to have the ability to produce snazzy videos, which means I need somebody to produce those videos, which means I propose bringing a producer on board who has the ability to create those things. Or if institutionally you're strapped for resources, you can borrow or buy that set of skills outside. Identifying that skill set becomes important. And so now we have a set of fantastic videos that even have won awards now. But part of it is how you add value to your business is helping them think creatively about how we push on that end. Mm-hmm. That is an HR person's job, I feel, because it is about bringing in a skill set that doesn't currently exist.
That's interesting, because in all of the HR leaders I've talked to, I've never heard anyone say it that same way. It's different. Your perception of how you look at the problem is the difference between being an order taker and being aligned with the business goals. Ultimately, in the point of, say you're just standing by the water cooler, if you're working in office, I guess, these days, and someone says, yeah, we're thinking about going down this road, or we think we have this business problem. And then the human aspect of it, i.e. the HR part of it, is, well, have you defined the skills you need? And maybe I can have a recruiter talk to you, or if it's me, help you define those needs. And then we can just help you decide, is it internal or external? Yeah. And then you can create your business plan. We're not just there for recruiting. We're not there just for payroll. We have expertise in that, and we can help you. That's our role.
It is demonstrating the value add in a very concrete manner that is accessible to everyone. It's very easier to talk through an example if you want to connect with people and then move the needle in terms of actually turning it into something actionable that can help the business flourish.
Yeah, that's really cool, because I've never actually heard anyone talk about that as far as really moving the needle, which isn't a normal HR role. It has been, the benefits calls, the payroll, the stresses of those things, manage those, the onboarding. But I think that's strategic when you're a partner. It's phenomenal for me to hear someone say, yeah, we're a real partner of the business because they were thinking about this and we said, well, let's help. What are the skills you need? Very true. I hope definitely our listeners get some insights in how they may be able to do that in their businesses too. You don't have to be an HR leader. You can be an HR admin in a manufacturing business when someone's saying, hey, we've got this problem over here, and if it has something to do with people and that's your expertise, lend a hand. If you know ChatGPT and you know how to get job descriptions written, you can just say, here's some of the skills that I've seen out there. Right?
Exactly.
Awesome.
Go on LinkedIn and tell them that these are the profiles. Make it more live and real for them instead of just
Yeah,
a
you
job
don't have to
description.
wait.
Make it
Yeah,
live
you don't
and
have.
say, these are XYZ people. So I am a big fan of actually not doing passive recruiting, but actually hunting for the people you need and
Yeah,
then getting them
sourcing
into
side
the
of it.
institution instead of passively waiting on your brand, the institutional brand, to work its magic. You could go out there and tell, hey, I think you're a great person. Why don't you come work for us?
All right, so we usually get to, try to do these things about 20 minutes or so. What are some kind of final thoughts that you like to share about maybe your entrepreneurial side in HR, or how does an HR leader talk business to a CFO?
So basically, the thing is to start with the common shared goal of any business. In a for profit organization, it could be either increasing revenue, decreasing costs, boosting profits, one of the
Yeah.
three. So you start with the shared goal.
Or stay out of jail. That's always
Well,
supposed
that's
to.
compliance. First step, don't do anything illegal. Yeah. Do not. The second step is always focus on how it will actually benefit the person. So my approach to thing is like I've always focused on like how it will benefit the institution. You have to sell it to different parts of the institution, whether
Yeah.
it is senior leadership, your peers on the leadership, or the rest of the people in the institution. And all of them will require a slightly different pitch because their needs are different and their orientation and the way they touch the institutional elephant is different. It's like the proverbial six blind men. Somebody's touching the trunk, somebody's touching the tail, somebody's touching the legs. They are not wrong, but that is one perspective. If you want everybody to come together, part of my objective has been to increase the visibility of the elephant itself for everybody so that there is greater shared visibility of the entire institution so that we all feel like we have some skin in the game. It's not like, oh, fundraising is that person's job or bringing talent in is this person's job. It's like, no, we all depend on the institutional talent to flourish. It could be an accountant today, it could be a program person tomorrow, it could be a marketing person day after. But all of which is talent. Similarly, if you have to pay them, finance person has to be involved. So for me, it's a team sport.
Yeah, that's a great way to end the section too. So, Vinod, what's the best way for people to reach you?
The best way for people to reach me is via LinkedIn.
All right. So we'll put your LinkedIn profile link in the description because I think there are probably lots of HR leaders who would love to hear more. And I know Vinod's got on his LinkedIn profile, he's got a couple of videos of startup things he's done too. Lots of great insights. And thank you so much. Hopefully listeners got some great insights. And thanks so much for being on the show with us.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the invite. Happy to be.
Thanks for spending your time here with GoHire Talks and listening to our guests. My intention has always been to create incredible content to help you in your career in recruiting, marketing, business, and leadership. We appreciate all of the insights and feedback you provide. If you've got guests you'd like us to have on the show, please let us know. Again, thank you for all your support.